The Bennett family had always craved the ocean's peace. When Paul and Emily found a weathered cottage on a wind-swept bluff, they knew it was home for them and their 5-year-old daughter, Sophie. Their scrappy terrier, Milo, came too, a wiry bundle of energy who would chase waves with Sophie all day. But that first night, as the sea roared below, Milo perched on Sophie's windowsill and let out a low, steady growl aimed at the glass. Emily frowned, tugging him down. "What's out there, buddy?" she murmured. Paul peeked outside. Nothing but moonlit waves. Yet Milo's growls pierced the quiet, chilling them both. The pattern held. Every night around 1 a.m., Milo would leap onto Sophie's sill, fix his eyes on the dark beyond, and growl. Soft at first, then louder, his small frame trembling. Sophie slept through it, her curls fanned across the pillow, but Paul started pacing the hall. "Maybe a raccoon," he suggested, setting a flashlight by the bed. Emily wasn't convinced. Milo ignored critters back in the city. They tried closing the curtains, but he would paw them open, nails clicking against the glass. One night, Paul stayed up, coffee in hand, watching. Milo's growls seemed to sink with the tide, peaking as waves crashed harder. "He's losing it," Emily whispered, bleary-eyed. They called the local vet, who checked Milo's ears and teeth. "Fit as a fiddle," she said. "Could be the salt air." Back home, Sophie woke once, blinking. "Milo's mad at the wind," she mumbled, her voice small. Paul rigged a camera by the window. Hours of footage showed Milo staring, growling. But the lens caught only fog and sea spray. Desperate for answers, Paul pulled on his boots the next night and trudged down the bluff with a flashlight. The waves looked normal, but the air stung his nose, sharp, almost metallic. He chalked it up to seaweed, but Milo's growls grew sharper when he returned. Emily's nerves frayed. "What if he snaps at her?" she asked, clutching Paul's arm. "We can't keep ignoring this." A storm rolled in on the 10th night, rain lashing the cottage. Milo's growls turned to barks, sharp, insistent, his claws scrabbling at the windowpane. Sophie stirred, whining, "Make him stop." Paul scooped Milo up, but the dog twisted free, darting to Sophie's bedside and tugging at her blanket with his teeth. Emily's heart lurched. She grabbed Sophie, who coughed faintly, her cheeks unnaturally pale in the dim light. "She's sick," Emily gasped, panic rising. Milo bolted back to the window, barking at the glass until it rattled. "That's enough," Paul shouted, storming over. He flung the window open, wind whipping inside, and froze. A harsh, acrid smell flooded the room. Not salt or rain, but something chemical, burning his throat. Below the bluff, the waves had turned black and oily, glinting unnaturally in the lightning. Sophie coughed again, a weak, raspy sound. Milo lunged, snapping at the air, his barks desperate. Emily screamed, "Get her out!" Paul scooped Sophie up, her body limp against him, and the family stumbled downstairs as the stench thickened. Milo raced ahead, barking to lead the way. At dawn, they called the Coast Guard. Milo trembled by Sophie's side as she lay bundled in a blanket, her breathing shallow but steadying. A team arrived, their protective suits rustling as they tested the water below the bluff. The lead officer frowned at the readings. "Toxic spill," he said grimly. "An old fuel line ruptured offshore. Benzene levels off the charts. It's been seeping up with the tides into the air." Paul's stomach dropped. "That smell, it was in her room." The officer nodded. "You're lucky. A few more nights, and it could have killed you all, especially the little one." Emily clutched Sophie, realization crashing over her. He wasn't growling at Sophie. He was warning us. Milo's nose had caught the poison creeping in, night after night. He had tried to tell them, had tried to protect Sophie. And they had almost ignored him. Paul exhaled shakily and ran a hand through his hair. "We owe him everything." That evening, safe in a motel, Paul crouched beside Milo, ruffling his ears as tears welled up. "You're a genius, you little menace," he choked out, his voice breaking. Emily sat beside Sophie, who giggled weakly as Milo licked her face, her color slowly returning. "He's my best friend," Sophie whispered, hugging the dog tight. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. Her hand trembled as she stroked Milo's fur. "We almost lost her," she said softly, looking at Paul. He's our shield. Our miracle. The parents were horrified to learn the truth. A silent killer had been poisoning their daughter, and they had been blind to it. But Milo had known. His growls had saved them. Paul wiped his face and pulled Emily into a tight embrace. He's more than just a pet. He's our guardian. That night, as Sophie drifted to sleep in the safety of the motel, Milo curled up beside her, his tail wagging softly in the dim light. Emily reached down, stroking his fur. "Thank you, Milo," she whispered, "for never giving up." Paul sighed, glancing at the dog. "We should share this story. People need to know just how incredible animals can be." Milo thumped his tail as if in agreement. Paul turned to the camera, his voice steady yet emotional. Don't miss out on more stories like this. Subscribe now, hit that button, and join our family of animal lovers. And tell us, has a pet ever saved you? We'd love to hear your story. Because heroes like Milo deserve every cheer. As the video ended, Sophie stirred, murmuring in her sleep, "Milo's my hero." And he truly was.